Did you know there was a day when the Roman Republic practically imploded, giving rise to one of the most powerful empires and dynasties in history? Imagine the shock of seeing the Senate losing control as legions swore loyalty to a single general, determined to reshape the entire future of Rome. This transition not only changed the fate of a city, but also affected the course of countless civilizations around the ancient world. And the most intriguing part, it all began with a bold step in the wrong direction, or perhaps the right one, depending on who tells the story. The tension between Julius Caesar and Pompey, two of the greatest political and military figures of the time, caused a rift so deep that nothing would ever be the same again. The Republic, fragile in its internal disputes, found itself faced with a choice: submit to the power of the legions or fight for an authority that no longer existed in practice. In this scenario, the idea of control through the military emerged, strongly, setting a precedent that would echo for decades. Curious to understand how everything fits into this equation of power and war, the fascination lies in how Rome, once governed by laws and senators, became a board of intrigues, generals and armies loyal only to the commander who promised them glory. The Rubicon was not just a river crossed, it was the mental boundary between the ancient republic and a centralized regime, paving the way for monumental conquests. But was this transformation inevitable, or could the Republican traditions have been saved? As we delve deeper into this journey, you will discover how a simple act can unleash battles, betrayals, and twists that shape the rise of an empire. With each scene, we will understand the crucial moments in which Rome split in two, pulled by the ambition of its own citizens. Get ready, because the day that destroyed the Roman Republic is about to reveal its darkest secrets. The First Triumvirate emerged as a political alliance between Julius Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus, uniting three men in search of absolute power over Rome. Did you know that this partnership had everything it needed to revolutionize the republican system, but ended up generating fatal rivalries? With Crassus's death at the Battle of Carrhae, the balance crumbled and Pompey aligned himself with the Optimates aristocrats to reinforce his influence. Meanwhile, Caesar, triumphant in Gaul, accumulated prestige and loyal legions, consolidating his reputation as an invincible general. The Senate, fearful, ordered Caesar to disband his troops and return as a mere citizen. However, this demand was like asking a lion to abandon its mane. Caesar ignored the call and saw audacity as the key to obtaining what he wanted. Imagine the political impact of this. Senatorial authority was challenged, exposing the weakness of a model that depended on obedience without guarantees. From this moment on, Rome's fate rested in the hands of a single rising general. But how did this power emerge? The answer lies in the spoils of Gaul, where Caesar not only amassed wealth but also gained the unwavering devotion of his soldiers. Each victory over tribes like the Helvetii and Belgae was a step toward consolidating his image as a charismatic leader. While Pompey sought support from the Senate, Caesar spoke directly to the legions, promising not only riches but also eternal fame for all who followed him. And this is where the perfect setting for the great confrontation began to take shape. When Caesar decided to cross the Rubicon on January 10, 49 BC, the fuse was lit. The civil war was no longer just a hypothesis, it had become a reality. And if you think this conflict was brief and straightforward, prepare to discover how every political and military move planted the seeds for an era of general emperors. As soon as he crossed the Rubicon, Caesar advanced through Italy almost without encountering resistance, as many cities chose to open their doors rather than face him. This left Pompey and his allies without a support base, forcing them to flee to Greece to gather strength. The speed of the campaign surprised even the most cautious. Within weeks, Rome was in Caesar's hands, and the Senate had scattered throughout the Mediterranean. This move exposed the defensive weakness of Rome, which, despite being the heart of the Republic, lacked walls capable of stopping a lightning-fast attack. Imagine the moral shock of realizing that the Eternal City was defenseless against legions fiercely loyal to a single man. Military power, once a tool for territorial expansion, had transformed into the primary means to manipulate internal politics. By conquering Rome with little bloodshed, Caesar demonstrated his skill not only as a general, but also as a political strategist. Instead of instituting a regime of terror, he ensured the routine of the city flowed, trying to maintain a semblance of normalcy. This touch of psychological control was crucial in consolidating his position, as in the eyes of the populace, Caesar was not a hostile invader, but a protector of public order. However, the apparent calm came at a price. Pompey and the exiled senators in Greece plotted retaliation. This scenario highlighted the absence of a unified center of power, something that would later haunt the Roman Empire in critical moments, such as the barbarian invasions of the 5th century. But the question that hung in the air was simple. If Pompey could rebuild his army, would the Republic be restored? Or would everyone be trapped in a continuous cycle of civil wars? While mastering Italy, Caesar also focused on securing control over the provinces that economically sustained Rome. Did you know he sent trusted generals to Spain and Sicily, securing supply routes and sources of income? This way, he consolidated a solid base of military and financial support, further strengthening his army. The secret was to leave no gaps. Each province was a pillar that would support his power. The wealth obtained from the campaigns in Gaul played an essential role in this process. With abundant resources, Caesar could finance the loyalty of soldiers and politicians, creating a web of alliances that diminished the Senate's influence. This model of general politics set a precedent for future emperors, as it demonstrated that controlling the grain and metal-producing regions was just as critical as numerical advantage on the battlefield. It's worth remembering that Caesar's army discipline was legendary. Soldiers who followed him not only feared the rigor of his leadership, but also believed in his cause, seeing victory as a chance for social ascent and personal glory. This nearly unbreakable bond between commander and troops foreshadowed what we would see throughout the empire: charismatic generals ascending to the throne supported by fanatic legions. However, this expansion of power in the provinces raised alarms among Caesar's adversaries. Pompey, surrounded by allies in the east, planned a robust counterattack, hoping the provinces would remain divided in loyalty. At that time, the great question was, who would control the supply and trade routes? After all, without supplies, even the most devoted army couldn't withstand a campaign for long. After consolidating his dominance in Italy, Caesar crossed the Adriatic to confront Pompey on his own territory. Have you ever imagined what it would be like to face a numerically superior army and still come out victorious? At the Battle of Pharsalus in 48 BC, Caesar proved his military genius by defeating Pompey's larger but less cohesive forces. This triumph was a devastating blow to the senatorial faction. In flight, Pompey sought refuge in Egypt, believing he would find protection there. However, King Ptolemy III, fearing to displease Caesar, ordered Pompey's assassination. For many Romans, Egypt proved to be a deadly trap, but for Caesar it was a political opportunity. By aligning himself with Cleopatra, he ensured Rome's intervention in local power, guaranteeing strategic control over one of the richest regions of the Mediterranean. This maneuver made it even more evident that, in the Roman power game, alliances could change swiftly and brutally. Pompey's fate in Egypt was a portent of what would happen in the empire, where defeated generals sought refuge in distant provinces, sometimes finding death at the hands of former allies. In practice, the strength of a general depended as much on their personal prestige as on the willingness of foreign rulers to support them. By establishing a foothold in Egypt, Caesar reinforced the idea that, in Roman civil wars, it was not always the larger numbers that won, but rather the more ingenious. This lesson would resonate in future conflicts, such as the Year of the Four Emperors in 69 AD, when skilled commanders used superior tactics to assert themselves. And while Pompey may have succumbed at that moment, the lingering question remained: could the Republic still be saved, or was Rome irreversibly on the path toward a hereditary empire? With Pompey's death, Caesar returned to Rome as a virtually uncontested figure. Acclaimed dictator for life in 44 BC, he initiated a series of reforms that modernized the state machinery and offered more rights to citizens outside the Italian peninsula. But deep down, Was it all just a way to centralize even more power? The Senate, reduced to a shadow of its former self, watched these changes with a mix of fear and resentment. The conspiracy that resulted in Caesar's assassination on March 15, 44 BC, was the final attempt to defend the Republic, though it illustrated the extent of the chaos into which Rome had plunged. The coup not only removed Caesar from the scene, but also created a power vacuum that would reignite the flames of civil war. Mark Antony, Octavian, and other leaders emerged as heirs to a conflicted legacy, each claiming to be the true successor. In this new phase, Octavian, later known as Augustus, rose to prominence. By winning the competition and becoming the first emperor of Rome in 27 BC, he consolidated the model that Caesar had initiated, that of an absolute ruler who no longer answered to the Senate. The seed planted by Caesar blossomed, transforming into the main characteristic of the Roman Empire, the centralization of power in a single figure, supported by the army. From that point on, the Republic was little more than a nostalgic memory. The Republican system, based on a fragile balance between senators and magistrates, gave way to a regime of authoritarian concentration. Perhaps it is pertinent to ask, even though the knife that killed Caesar was wielded in the name of freedom, what it truly liberated was the spirit of a nascent empire, shaped by the ambition of a single man. The war between Caesar and Pompey inaugurated a bloody cycle of internal conflicts that would torment Rome for centuries. One only needs to recall the year of the four emperors, 69 AD, when after Nero's fall, various generals fought for the throne. This exhaustive repetition of civil wars showed that real power lay with those who controlled the legions, far more than with the Senate itself. Have you ever wondered why Rome did not establish a solid succession system? The absence of clear laws for choosing the new ruler left room for disputes where military force was the most convincing argument. This phenomenon also recurred during the crisis of the 3rd century, 235–284 AD, when more than 20 emperors succeeded one another in just 50 years. It was a true political Russian roulette. These civil wars eroded the structure of the empire from within, undermining its border defenses and making long-term projects unfeasible. While generals battled for power on Roman soil, barbarian peoples and other powers grew stronger at the borders. Thus, this pattern of self-destruction contributed to the economic and military strain that, centuries later, would culminate in the definitive fall of Rome in the West. The case of Caesar and Pompey was merely the spark of a logic that perpetuated itself. The lesson? When there is no efficient mechanism for the transition of power, each leader becomes a potential dictator or rebel. Perhaps it was inevitable that Rome, in expanding so much, would end up being a victim of its own glory, always at the mercy of the next generals thirsting for fame and dominance. The moment Caesar crossed the Rubicon, it became clear that the army was the key to controlling Rome. Did you know that the Senate often became a mere spectator, while ambitious generals decided the course of politics? The power of the legions became notorious in the following centuries, when emperors like Septimius Severus or Diocletian rose to power with massive support from the troops. The army, which had once been the instrument for expanding borders, became the determining agent in choosing who would govern. On various occasions, soldiers deposed and elevated emperors based on benefits, promises of payment, or even simple preference. This created an atmosphere of constant instability, as any successful commander could proclaim himself emperor if he had the favor of the legions. But not everything was limited to violence. Constantine, for example, won the civil war against Maxentius in 312 AD and used his military power to officialize Christianity. In this case, we see how the dominance of the troops could influence not only politics, but also religion and culture throughout the empire. The same pattern that began with Caesar transformed the previously persecuted Christian faith into the doctrinal basis of the Roman state. In the end, what this reveals is that Roman politics became a hostage to military logic. Whoever controlled the swords controlled the laws. And if this seems cruel or wrong to us, we must remember that this model guided the history of Rome for centuries, shaping how we understand leadership, power, and territorial expansion. Egypt became fundamental for the Roman Empire after the death of Pompey, when Caesar intervened in the dispute between Cleopatra and Ptolemy III. Controlling Egypt meant securing the wheat supply for Rome, a vital factor in a world where food scarcity often led to revolts. Did you know that the Egyptian province was treated almost as the emperor's personal property, given its importance? Throughout the empire, any turmoil in Egypt had immediate repercussions in the heart of Rome. The political stability of the province was a top priority for emperors, who appointed trusted prefects to govern it. If this system failed, the supply crisis threatened the social peace in the capital. It was as if Egypt were the lung that oxygenated the metropolis, without which everything could collapse. This dynamic was repeated in other strategic regions, such as Sicily and North Africa, confirming the trend initiated by Caesar to maintain each province under strict military and economic control. Just as Pompey sought refuge in Egypt, many later generals would seek the support of local rulers or provincial wealth to fund their ambitions. The power of Rome, after all, depended on the sum of all these territories. Therefore, when we look at the civil war between Caesar and Pompey, we realize that it inaugurated a style of governing and conquering provinces with one eye on internal politics and the other on global balance. And if Egypt was a stage for betrayal and murder, it also became the most valuable piece on the imperial board, proving that, in Rome, winning battles was not enough. One also had to win geopolitics. The civil war between Caesar and Pompey not only destroyed the Roman Republic, it laid bare that military force would be the supreme authority behind political decisions for the following centuries. That was the day when the values of the Senate, so venerated over generations, were definitively buried by the reality of the legions and the charisma of bold leaders. Rome did not succumb immediately, but the Republic lost its breath, paving the way for the emergence of a solid and centralized empire. It is inevitable to ask, would the Republic have survived if Pompey had won? Or would another general have emerged to follow the same script of absolute power? While some senators still dreamed of restoring the old virtues, the majority already bowed before the ambition of a single man. The reforms of Caesar, and later of Augustus, shaped the pillars of a new era, a regime that would last for centuries and influence the world far beyond Rome. But the legacy of this war was not only political, it was also cultural and social, as it marked the moment when Rome began to see itself as an empire destined to rule vast territories. From that point on, the myth of Roman invincibility grew, underpinned by military successes yet undermined by increasingly frantic internal struggles. The end of the Republic was also the beginning of a history made of epic conquests, but also of intrigues and palace coups. Now we invite you to reflect. Can the decisions of a small group always sway the fate of an entire nation? Leave your opinion in the comments and participate in this discussion. If this topic has sparked your curiosity, subscribe to the channel, give us a like, and share this video with friends and family who love history. Let's continue to explore together the great turning points of the past that shaped the world we live in.